Welcome to the Podcast Discovery Show, a podcast that is about other podcasts. Each week we talk about a new podcast and we talk about everything it made us think and feel, and then we're going to do the same thing next week with a brand new recommendation. I am Zach, and I actually have a little bit of news for everyone. Kirk is taking a short hiatus from the show. We have not had any kind of a falling out. He will be back. But for the next month or so, it is going to be me, and I am lucky enough to know someone named Matt Walker, who I thought would be perfect to have on the show. And so he will be joining us for the next couple weeks here. So Matt, thanks so much for joining.
Thank you for having me, Zach. It is good to be here.
I'm really excited. I've wanted to have you on for a long time anyway, so it's going to be great. And the first episode that we are going to be talking about is the last Kirk recommendation, and that is The Apology Line, which is a Wondery show. So we've talked a lot on our show about how much we appreciate kind of the production quality that Wondery puts in, and this is just another one of these. But the premise of this show is that there was, in Manhattan in the 80s, a phone line that was dedicated to, if you are a criminal, call this line and you can apologize to the people that you've harmed. And that is kind of all they start you off with. And then it really is, Kirk was really on the fence about recommending the entire series because it really ramps up fast. So Matt, had you ever heard of this show?
I have not. I've never even heard of the premise. I've never heard of this ever at all.
I hadn't either. And it's so interesting to me because it's not the same anymore. This was back when there was phone booths, there was answering machines, there was all of these things that were so encapsulated in that time specifically, but it just goes crazy pretty much immediately. So they start out by talking a little bit about Alan, who is the guy who started Apology, and he was an artist. He was a pretty extreme guy by most people's accounts. There was definitely a story in there about him doing coke and setting his hair on fire. And he was unaffected generally. Yes.
And there was one story about how he and a buddy put fishing hooks in their trench coats and went into groceries and stole steaks.
Yeah, he also I guess
really didn't understand that.
It seemed odd because just why? Like it seems like a cartoon character thing to do where you're just like, I'm going to steal some steaks now. But yeah, he was a kind of a crazy guy, and he set up this thing, and apparently just one night, him and a buddy went and put up a bunch of flyers to literally say, hey, criminals, I want to hear what your brain's like. And just that's it. It was I guess like one of the more interesting kind of art experiments I've heard of, because you're exposing yourself to a weird subset of people who you probably don't want to be.
Yeah, definitely don't want to be. That's what we learn, at least.
Yeah, no. So the beginning is reporters are kind of seeing these flyers going up, and they're just like, what's happening here? And then he starts getting calls from people, and these, I don't even really know how to describe it, but the last call on this, and we'll get more into it, it literally like gave me chills the first time I heard it, because you're hearing the actual apology line. You're hearing the recordings, and they just had an answering machine in their house that played 24/7. Whenever these people would call, you would hear it, like, because it was the old school tape answering machines. It would just play in your house on a speaker. And so you're just sitting there listening to people saying weird stuff on your answering machine.
Yeah, it sounds like it's Saturday night.
Yeah, pretty much. And no, he did set up like a party for that. He had everybody over. He's like, hey, you guys want to hear what's on Apology? And he just starts playing this. And so you get some people who are like, oh, I robbed someone and I shouldn't have done that. Or there was one guy who, and I think it might have been the second episode, but he crashed his car and ended up destroying someone's business. And he's like, I feel bad about that. But very quickly, you figure out that he's also getting really deranged people calling in. And it really doesn't take long for it to start going there.
Yeah, you pretty immediately, you meet that guy. Well, I guess, what is it? It's not Richie. He's the later one.
Oh, it's Bernie.
Bernie. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was some other Bernie Richie.
Yeah.
If you've got a name ending in an IE,
It's a
I'm just going to say,
problem.
you're bad news. You're bad news.
That's really all it takes.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's like, apparently, and there's a lot about this where the host of this show is Marissa Bridge, and you don't find out until the very end of this episode. It's kind of like the bombshell that she is the host of this show because she was married to Alan through this whole process. She was married to him until apparently he died in a freak accident. And I think that's when Apology ended. So I haven't listened through the whole series. I'm guessing they probably get to why it ended, and that's what happened. But she was married to him, and so all of these things she also experienced. He would have dinner parties and play these things, and then one time he sat her down and he's like, "Okay, I need to tell you something. I have received a death threat." And they play the death threat, and this is the first thing that, like, it was the one where, like, it kind of gave me chills, and it also hooked me to the show for sure, because that's how they end the first episode. And it's just this guy that you can hear is not right in the head. Like, as he's talking,
Right.
he's like semi giggling randomly throughout.
Yeah. And that's the other thing. Up until that point, anytime they play anybody, they'd constantly be saying like, "Oh, thank you. This is a great service." And they'd say that a lot. And then this guy, it's kind of run of the mill. He's like, "Ha ha ha. Yeah. Oh man. Thank you so much. This is such a great service." And then it's just like, whoa, he's way different from everybody else.
Yes, because he starts confessing to killing a bunch of people, and so this is the final moment of this first episode as he's confessing to, "Oh, I've killed a bunch of people, but I had to stop because I was like feeling bad, but now I feel so good." And you can almost hear like crazy joy in his voice.
Yeah. And it's such an interesting juxtaposition because earlier in the episode, they're talking with the neighbor that's a therapist or psychologist or whatever. And she's like, don't, or this is not good, whatever.
This is not a great idea, buddy.
And then she comes around and she's like, it's actually really cathartic for people, and I see what he's doing, he's making space for that. And then when this guy goes on, it's like, oh, dang, dude. Yeah, if you make space for that, you're welcoming it.
Yeah, because he ends up saying like, "Thank you for giving me this so that I could take this weight off my chest." And he's like, "Oh, by the way, I'm going to say I'm sorry to you now because I'm going to find you and I'm going to kill you." And he's just like laughing about it. He's like, "I'll say that it's Bernie from the phone right before I kill you, and you'll know I did it. And you can know that you made me happy." And it's like, this guy is messed up. Like, it's seriously, you're listening to this phone call play out. And I was just like, it makes you feel like weird to hear someone talk like this.
So weird.
It was unpleasant. And then he also, the premise of the line in general was, we're not cops. We're not connected to the police, nothing like that. We just want people that are like hurting people to be able to apologize to them in a safe place. He said, "Don't leave your name, call from a payphone," and it's all, and that's it. Like, but from the very beginning, he said, "This will be played somewhere, somehow. Don't know exactly, but I'm planning on releasing some of these tapes." And so someone called, and this was definitely during the era of just, there was a lot of crime against the gay community in general.
It was 79 or 80, I think, that early on.
Yeah, and there was someone who called and was literally part of that problem. He said that he would target homosexual men and he would either mug them, but in one case he killed someone, and he left his name, and a cop calls Alan and is like, "Okay, I need to hear that tape." And so I don't know. I don't know. I do wonder if like there's some element of they want to be caught, like, or they want something from calling, because if you're a really good criminal, you're not calling this line.
Right.
Like, you're not confessing to anything. You're just doing crimey things and going on with your day.
Yes. Crimey things from morning till dawn.
Yeah, pretty much.
Dawn. Yeah.
But so he finds a way around this too, because he goes and plays the tapes on NPR. So he didn't turn over any evidence to the police. He just kind of, oh, it's out there and maybe some police heard it. What can I do about it?
Yeah.
All of
Well,
this
and
is
it's
just,
interesting too, because as soon as it started saying that, it was like, oh, there's parallels to what, like 4 or 5 years ago, the Bernardino thing, where Apple wouldn't give up their thing or whatever,
Mhm.
and they're like, we don't do that, and it's like, oh wow, what a weird the morality it has existed and continues, just
yeah, it's
continues.
there's so much about this entire premise because they essentially drop you after him getting the death threat, and he tells Marissa that they have both been threatened, and then that's where they drop the first episode. And so then you start thinking like, okay, where would this fit into today? You know,
Mm,
because really the internet is this. You can go and do this anywhere you want. You know, you can just go say whatever you want to, wherever you want to, anonymously. I
yeah,
mean, you're in some way tracing yourself, but I think that this was one of those types of things that it will be very hard to replicate in any meaningful way because it was just how that specifically that time worked.
yeah. It's fascinating to think about, but yeah. The end of that first episode was just like, oh, they really did a nice job with the production. Like, holy smokes, you talked about Wondery, but like, wow, I love the sound design that they had
Mm-hmm.
with the New York streets and everything. But it ended with this sort of like, it just has this great play where it's like, whoa, this is a huge, crazy notion that they buried. Like, they buried throughout the episode the effect that it could be, oh yeah, it can give criminals clemency to do crime. And
Yeah, yeah.
it was like,
There was
dang.
a lot, and I feel like there was a lot of this that was he was a little bit winging this. He thought of a cool idea and he launched this entire thing, but he didn't know everything that could come from it because it changes constantly. So episode
Yeah.
2 they kind of get into some of those changes where okay, first of all, he has to tell all his neighbors that, oh, there is a crazy guy named Bernie who says that he's going to find me and he's going to kill me. So just an FYI, just something you should be aware of. There's a crazy guy who
I
wants
love
me specifically.
I love that when he tells one of the neighbors, they're like, I can't move. I
It's
got
like
kids and
this is
stuff.
it, man. And no, and all he did was like he changed his locks and he's like, well, that's done, ready to go. Didn't change anything else. Did not stop doing it. Nothing else. Just like I have new locks now. So if he tries to get in here, he's going to need a new key.
Yeah.
But then he starts kind of exploring, and it really does kind of point to he was an interesting person as an artist because he starts exploring the different kind of iterations this can take. So he had a whole art installation that there was I think 4 phone booths
Mm-hmm.
around the place, and you could literally walk in, and I think it was a big party, a big thing, and he dressed in disguise because Bernie has freaked him out now. Um, so he just set up 4 phone booths so you could walk in, you could pick up the receiver, and you could listen to these calls. And I don't know how they have selected the ones for the apology line. I didn't. I'm not sure, but like it's fairly tame as far as it
Yeah.
could be worse. You know, like even the crazy guy, it's because you can hear the crazy in his voice. You know, you can hear he's just not right. Like he's like laughing weirdly and at weird times, and it's just not good. But nobody is like saying anything horrific, at least in these couple ones, like anything that's like overly crazy. So I wonder if they've cut some of these
Oh,
and
I
like,
can imagine some people just call and are like, F you, man.
yeah,
You know, it's like, what? Well, and it's cool too. So like the way the story pans out is just so interesting because it kind of, that moment where he does the 4 phone booths things really kicks off the different iterations of the
mm-hmm,
things that he's like, I see how this can play and everything. Because it was essentially like you're interacting with the people and they're interacting with you when you go in and you pick up the phone, right?
mm-hmm,
So it's really cool, conceptual. And then right after that, it's the when he starts putting the apologies that he's recorded at the top, when you call the number, you hear other ones, and then people respond to them and stuff. But where it really got me is when he would respond to some people. He would call them back.
Call some of them back.
Like,
yeah, I think that he was a different type of personality. Like, he just was in this thing. And where we would, like, at least me, I would get freaked out as soon as people started saying they were going to kill me, and I would not be calling people anymore. But he will just call people back and be like, there was one guy who said they thinks he was Satan because his premise and the kind of the one-liner he put at the beginning of the apology line was, we're not, don't apologize to a priest, don't apologize to God, apologize to the people you've hurt. It was kind of the premise. And so a guy really stuck on that. He's like, you're saying don't apologize to God? He's like, no, what I'm saying is they need to apologize to people. He's like, but I don't really believe in God. And the guy's like, well, that's why I don't want to talk to you, idiot. And he just like hangs up. But yeah, he 100% is like actively engaging in this. This is not something that he just put up here and let it happen. It was a constantly evolving and very engaged process that he was working on.
And that's what Marissa pointed out, because she was like, that's when he started interacting with everything. He made himself a part of the thing rather than, and then he went by, we kind of glommed over this, but he went by Chris Apology rather than his real name, for like pseudonym kind of whatever. And it's so fun listening to them be like, Mr. Apology. He would leave voicemails for people at the top. Like he would put other people's, and he would give instructions and stuff. And he'd be like, it's Mr. Apology. And just, if you're a criminal, I would like to know more about why you do things. And like, that's when.
Yeah. And that really opened it up again. Like it really is this, you can see this kind of progression. So first thing, you can just apologize. Second thing, he puts kind of a curated list of, here's some other people who have apologized. I'll change this monthly, but here's an idea of what's happening on here. But then they start talking to each other or about each other. They're like, oh, that guy who was talking on there, he's an idiot. Here's why. So then there's like kind of this back and forth there, and they would try to talk to him. And then he starts trying to probe the motive, the mindset of people who are committing these crimes. And that's when killers start calling in.
Which is great. Well, and it's even before that, because he keeps getting, because Marissa brings up that they have regulars which is really funny.
Mr. Hard Time, something like that.
Yes, I love them. And maybe the Zodiac killer.
Yeah,
He'd call in and go, "This is the Zodiac," and I don't even know what he would say. I just be like, "Oh," because he wouldn't apologize. And then he's like, well, shit, now I really got to know what these people are.
Yeah.
He's like, why are you doing this?
And that's the thing, is like, why are they even calling? Like, why are these conversations even happening? Because, okay, you're the Zodiac killer. You're super secretive.
Hold on. That's,
not you specifically.
Okay,
don't worry.
Okay, good. Don't say that.
No, but he's leaving ciphers everywhere. He doesn't even he wants you to like dig to figure it out. So there's some part of, he wants you to see that he's smart. He wants to be seen for that. And so I think that may be something they're tapping into there, because I don't know why else people would call in on it. But the people start calling in and explaining like, oh, I have this moral code where I don't, because there was one guy who was like, well, I don't do anything to kids or women, kind of like the Wire stuff, where it's just like, it's like gang stuff, and he's laying it all out. But honestly, this one, the end call on this one is almost worse than Bernie. It might have been worse when I first heard it, because he is not at all affected. Like, it's not like he's like trying to be like the Joker. He is just talking about why he should be killing people more often.
It's like, I listened to your voicemail, and well, this is why I do it. It's very just
and it literally just came down to it. I did it one time and it felt really great. And so I've been chasing that feeling ever since.
Yeah.
Basically with that inflection, like nothing there at all.
Crazy. And then he'd leave voicemails that were like, tell me more about this, and they'd interact with each other. It was crazy. Because the guy would be like, no, you're not understanding. I do this for myself.
Yeah, no, and he also thought that if you weren't like chasing your impulses and the things that make you feel good, you are repressed. And so literally this is one of the guys that he calls back and talks to about like, well, I think that he might have left a voicemail. I can't tell if that was a conversation
or an editing trick to make it seem like him. Yeah.
But he essentially does kind of follow up and say like, and hopefully he was lying, but he said, look, I have these thoughts too. I have these impulses, but I know that they're wrong, so I don't do them. And the guy's, his name was Richie, but the guy was just like, no, I mean, you're repressing what you're like destined to do. And so hearing someone that's that cold and calculated is disturbing, because there was nothing there, like completely flat, just talking about how it felt good to him. And he knows that people probably wouldn't like that he does it, but he doesn't care. And he's just doing it. And so you kind of get this. In the end, I did want to kind of blast through the rest of this series. I will listen to the rest of this series to hear how it goes, because it's just so interesting to see how all this changes and how all this is constantly evolving. And then how much farther in is Alan going to get into this?
Because we're on 2 and he's talking to a maybe serial killer. Like,
and the kind of the little teaser at the end was like, he was considering having dinner with this guy. He got too like involved with like trying to understand what's happening in their head. And so you end up with this show that, like you said, it sounds so interesting because you get all these like 80s New York accents. You get all these like that really like crunchy sound that was like old phones.
Yes. Oh my God. The receivers picking up and stuff. Ooh, I loved that.
There was a lot of really, really cool sound to this show. But then you're hearing somebody who it sounds kind of goofy because it's like really old school, but they're saying horrifying things. And so it just kind of pulls you all over the place. So did you end up enjoying this show? Do you think you're going to finish it?
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's what the episodes are.
There's 6 episodes,
40 minutes. It's a very listenable thing, because I would look down and be like, has this been more than 2 episodes? Like, so much has happened.
Yeah,
I was like, what? I was like, we're only on 2. I was like halfway through. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's engaging, and with all the true crime stuff, it's like, it's one that I haven't heard of, which is hard to find. You're like, I know John Wayne Gacy, I know Ted Bundy, I know Night Stalker, I know, but I've never heard of this one. So I'm curious to see how it ties into all of the serial stuff,
Yeah, it's really interesting because it kind of breaks. It's not formulaic like a lot of these are, because the true crime is very, very popular at this point. And so there's a lot of formula to it. They pick a murder, they do the thing, the next episode do the thing. But this one is just so, and I think it could be because he's an artist and like there's something different to it. It's not just like a formulaic episode type thing. It literally is just exploring this weird moment in time that he captured. I don't even know if this type of thing has been captured like this in any way, because they could be lying. There's no telling. It's just letting people say whatever they want anonymously.
Yeah.
And it's a weird premise. And
it's interesting because it touches on that for me repeatedly. I'm like, if this guy's an artist, he's literally doing a performance conceptual art piece called Apology Line. It's so simple that he could have just gotten a buddy to call in and be like, hey, be deranged, But it still holds the same creepiness and like the weight of the actual thing, because it's like, well, we don't know. And if the idea, if it were, is like,
Yeah, no, because technically if he were, I guess, inclined to, he could manufacture the whole thing. That cop could have been fake. Everything could have been fake. If like, there's no way to stop it from happening. If he decided to orchestrate this whole thing, right, it could have been. But then you have like, if it's not, there was a murder of a gay man at this time, and that was a police officer that called in, because they literally bleeped his name, the officer's name, when he called in.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, the officer.
If that's a real person, and he literally heard some somebody admit to murdering someone that lined up with something that he was tracking, then what if this whole thing is real? And some of these people really needed confession. They needed to be able to admit it to someone, but without consequences, obviously. That's the thing, is this doesn't count as actual, that's nothing. You calling in and saying like, oh, I hurt somebody, I'm sorry, kind of, that's nothing.
Well, you know what it made me question was like, if he didn't say, hey, I'm not a cop, hey, I'm not a priest or whatever, I'm not going to tell anybody. Even if he didn't do that, I wonder if he'd still get the calls.
Maybe. And that's I am in no way qualified to understand the psychology behind it, but it's interesting to think about, because just why are people so drawn to somehow releasing the worst thing that's happened, because there's a lot of podcasts about this too, where there's shows like Risk, where you tell the story you swore you'd never tell. And there's a lot of shows like that where it just gives you a platform to say the thing that you were not going to say, to unburden yourself with something that you've been holding. So there is some kind of very human thing there of wanting to be able to share things with people. And so it ends up just being this crazy amalgamation of things where you have, it sounds awesome, you're getting weird people calling in, you're having these awesome kind of art changes and him being really interesting in how he's presenting this.
And there's the arc of their lives together, the host and I love that that's kind of the foundation of the whole thing. It's their lives. And then also on top of it are the apology things.
Yeah.
And the driving force is very tangible.
Yeah. Honestly, the structure of this show is more kind of where Marissa and Alan are at the time. So kind of the beginning is they're meeting and oh, here I have this weird project I'm doing at my house. And then they kind of it's a very well developed show, and I really liked it for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good. So I guess this begs the question, Zach, what's something that you would like to apologize for? Just kidding.
I mean, I'll tell you, I definitely remember my shoplifting, my first shoplifting experience. And it was funny because I grew up Christian. And so we went to a Christian bookstore. I think those are all gone now. But
you stole from a Christian bookstore? I
stole from a Christian bookstore, everyone. I went in there with my mom, and we were not wealthy. And so we went in there, and I try to remember what it was. It was a little pink, squeezy ball. I think it was supposed to be a pterodactyl. And so I saw it and I was like, can I have this? And she's like, no, that's dumb. You don't need that thing. And I was like, okay. And so later on, when she went around the store, I just stuck that thing in my pocket. I was like, that is now mine. But I knew that I had done something wrong. And so when I got home, I hid it. We had one of those entertainment centers, and I hid it underneath it, just tucked it down there. And I literally never played with it because I was like, she's going to know. If I take this thing out and she sees it, I'm done. And one day she decided to clean our living room, and she goes to move it, and my life flashed before my eyes. I don't know how long it had been. I was a kid at the time. So it could have been months, no telling. Just I just took it and stuck it under our entertainment center. And so she moves it, and she sees it, and she looks at me, and I was like, oh my God, this is it. She found it. And what she made me do is she made me go back to the Christian bookstore, and I was bawling my eyes out, and I had to apologize and pay them for it and give it back. I had to do all of the things that I didn't want to do. So there's my apology. And I had to apologize to them.
Man. So dang.
But yeah, it definitely it shook me from shoplifting for quite a while after that. It was quite the first experience.
That's funny. We were listening today to this, and the host Marissa had a shoplifting story about how she would and it was, what did she steal? She stole I don't even remember if she said what she stole, but she was same thing on. She was so riddled with guilt. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then, she'll never do it again. And both Carlin and I looked at each other, and we were like, Weak.
No, weak.
She's weak.
Well, this has been our version of Apology Line. It's slightly different. It's slightly different than Richie and Bernie, but there it is. That's it for
Zach will never shoplift again, and I'm not making promises.
No, it didn't. It didn't play out that way. When I got to college, I had worked through my stolen pink squishy thing issues and began stealing
you
again.
You were just stealing from any and every Christian bookstore you could find.
It wasn't. No, I was not a serial Christian bookstore robber. That is not. That is not what was happening. But I did shoplift a couple things after that. But that's for the next episode of Apology Line. But no, really, really great show. It will get you hooked. You're going to want to check it out. And actually, Matt said that he has the perfect recommendation for next week.
Oh my gosh. It is a amazing podcast that I love. It is called the Bechtel Cast. Do you want me to talk about it?
Yeah. Talk about it more would be great.
The hosts, Caitlin Durante and Jamie Loftus, they use a test. It's called the Bechdel test, and they look at popular movies through this test. And all a movie has to do to pass this Bechdel test is have two female characters that are named and that speak to each other about something other than a man. And it
sounds easy, doesn't it?
Oh, it sounds so easy, but hardly nary a film passes. It's amazing. And they've since sort of adapted this, that they also kind of talk about the movie through the lens of intersectional feminism, which is fun. And it's a task in some regards. For instance, they did the Human Centipede, and I can't imagine how feminism interacts with that film. But
I would be curious just to see the interaction between those two things, because I don't know how anything would react to that specific movie, because it was just its own its own thing.
Yeah. But the episode that I'd like to review is the Gigli episode. I don't have the episode number, but it's featuring Josh Fadem, and I happen to love Josh Fadem and Gigli, so it's quite a listen, and I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. So we're gonna have to watch Gigli before we get to this, so we know all the references.
Yes. It'll be a tough film to be misrepresented via.
We can't do that to the writers, to the cast and the crew.
Yeah.
So yeah, everybody check out the Bechtel Cast, Gigli with Josh Fadem, and we will be back next week. And remember,
there's always more to discover.
There it is. We're not even going to edit that. We're leaving the break.
I remembered.
Thank you for listening to the Podcast Discovery Show. We would love for you to get in touch. We have a Facebook group called the Podcast Discovery Club, and our Twitter is @thepdsofficial. We also record the show live every Friday night at 8 o'clock on Twitch. We would love for you to be part of the show while we're recording it.
If you want to support the show, we have a number of ways you can do that. From our Patreon to our affiliate links, they're always linked in the show notes. In the end, you support the show just by listening, and it means the world to us. So thank you so much for being a part of our journey.
This was a podcast from the Podfix Network. You can check out more shows like it at podfixnetwork.com.